Week 1 was all about introductions and forming a base understanding of Aboriginal education. We discussed kinship and traditions such as sorry business, welcome to country, and smoking ceremonies. We explored the correct terminology for Aboriginal culture, and I learned that country is the centre of everything and everyone. I now know the correct terminology, and I understand the importance of kinship and family roles. This allows me to be a knowledgeable and sensitive teacher for my students. Learning about the similarities and differences between Aboriginal and Western teachings also solidifies my knowledge that all students learn differently, and you must know your students to know how they learn best. Week 2 was about policy and their impacts, and this week we discussed the frontier wars and the government policies that were put into place that harmed Aboriginal people's access to education. These policies included the 1884 Clean, Clad and Courteous policy, as well as the Exclusion on Demand policy and the Protection policy. Understanding these allows me to gain an insight into how Aboriginal people may feel about schooling, and knowing that there is a mistrust between Aboriginal people and schools and teachers. I now know that school is a negative place for Aboriginal children, and this relationship isn't mended overnight, so I must work hard to build a relationship for my students and create a safe space for them. We started Week 3 talking about the different programs in place to work together building Aboriginal education outcomes. We learned about the Education Consultative Group, the Aboriginal Education Policy, and the Australian Institute for Teaching and School Leadership. These organisations act to increase knowledge of Aboriginal culture so that schools and communities work together to create welcoming and supporting classrooms. I now know the steps I will take to create a safe classroom that embraces Aboriginal culture. Holding a strength-based approach will ensure that my Aboriginal students are valued and their culture is celebrated. Week 4 was about community and support, and themes of respect, reciprocity, and relationships were really delved into this week. We learned all about the support we can access to further our knowledge and how to build relationships with the community. I know that reciprocal relationships must be established and maintained to see the long-term benefits. Examples of community include the wider Aboriginal services, Aboriginal education officers in schools, and Aboriginal education consultative groups. And it's not just one person's responsibility, but everyone's, to work together to promote Aboriginal education. It's important for me as a teacher to partake in culturally responsive teaching, building on my professional development, but I also must build these connections to the community to help foster both academic achievement and a sense of belonging for the students. Week 5 is my chosen week, and this week was about racism and the effects it has on health and well-being. This week was a real highlight in my learning as it resounded to me the long-term detriment of racism, including attitudinal, micro, and systemic, that plays a huge role in Aboriginal students' lives. What stuck with me was the intergenerational trauma and the way the events, such as the stolen generation, can change the way people's DNA is expressed and therefore be passed on to the next generation. I was emotionally impacted when learning these facts and seeing the ramifications that racism has on Aboriginal people's lives. Learning that Aboriginal kids have higher incarceration rates and are more likely to face economic disadvantages along with alcohol and substance abuse makes me committed as a teacher to ensure that Aboriginal students are set up for success and can receive a strong education free from racism in my classroom. I'm now more aware of the setbacks Aboriginal students face each day and the steps I can take to help minimise the effects. These include integrating Aboriginal culture and traditional pedagogy into the curriculum and creating a safe classroom where students embrace culture. Week 7, we learned about traditional Aboriginal pedagogy, and this was interesting as we discussed imitation, storytelling, and song and dance. The hands-on activities the children displayed in this week's video were fascinating as they were so young, yet extremely curious and capable. In my classroom, I need to hold all children as capable and confident learners who have ambitious goals to achieve. I can also incorporate singing and movement into my lessons as a way of learning as traditional Aboriginal pedagogy. From Week 8, I learned about the connection to classroom and how I can access and use appropriate Aboriginal resources in my lessons. Some questions I must ask myself as a future teacher include, is the creator of this resource Aboriginal? When was this resource made? And is it accurate and using correct terminology? In the tutorial, we reflected on our experiences in school and recalled if we had many opportunities to learn about Aboriginal people, history, and language. It was noted by many people they didn't learn or see much Aboriginal representation in their classes. This made me think about my classroom and how I wanted to be inclusive and celebratory of cultures. Accessing high-quality resources is a step I can take to achieve this. Week 9 was all about learning about the different languages and ways Aboriginal people can communicate. The various language groups and the utilisation of hand talk was fascinating, specifically learning that Aboriginal English is an official dialect, as I previously thought that it was a form of slang. This week instilled in me the importance of language and how it's connected to identity. Students are coming to classrooms with different dialects, and they should be celebrated, not told that they are wrong and need correcting. A quote to sum up week 10 is, "If the pattern is present, the knowledge is true." And this week we discussed the varying challenges and differences in Aboriginal to Western maths. Some of the notable differences that were mentioned are kinship patterns, time and weather seasons, and measurements. It's important to know as a teacher the funds of knowledge that students have. The weather pattern stuck out to me because despite not being in Western curriculum, it was highly relevant to everyone's lives, and when delving deeper, it teaches connection to environmental cycles, circles, patterns, and rotations. Week 12's lecture resonated with me as it was all about the teachers within the classroom. It's important for teachers to build that connection to allow students to want to come to class and know that they belong. Creating a classroom where the students feel you are genuine and trying and not just reciting Aboriginal policy off a whiteboard in order to check off curriculum will show the students that it's important and that they should care about these topics as well. An idea that stood out to me was that success is different for all students and that it's important to celebrate all success. The final week 13 lecture was all about connection to our place and everything in our place. In the tutorial, we did a final recap and reflected on what we have learnt this semester throughout the course. As a future teacher, it's important to reflect on my learning and see how my thoughts and ways have evolved and grown. Reflecting specifically on my place and the place I will hold in a school and how I can utilise my new knowledge from this course to provide engaging and inclusive education to Aboriginal students. It was nice to have a whole class discussion in our yarning circle, as it felt like a full circle moment as we ended the semester the way we started.